The Whispering Graves. The night I decided to visit the old cemetery on the outskirts of town, I thought I was chasing a trivial curiosity, a dare fueled by the restless boredom of summer. Nobody really talked about that place except in hushed tones, and locals avoided it as if it were a wound never to be touched. The iron gates were rusted, swinging slowly with each whisper of wind, and the tombstones leaned like tired old men, swallowed by creeping ivy and the shadows of twisted trees. I remember stepping between the cracked paths, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decayed leaves, feeling the weight of silence pressing down on me. At first, it was just the usual silence of a graveyard, but soon I realized it was not silence at all. There was a low murmuring, barely audible, like a chorus of voices just beyond comprehension. I tried to convince myself it was the wind playing tricks, but the whispers grew clearer as if the graves themselves were trying to speak. Drawn deeper into the labyrinth of stones, I found a cluster of fresh graves surrounded by withered flowers. The names on the markers were blurred, the dates recent, but the faces of those buried there were unknown to me. That's when the whispers stopped abruptly, leaving an oppressive stillness that choked the air. Suddenly, a cold hand brushed my arm, icy and unnatural, and I spun around to find no one. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I noticed faint footprints leading away from the graves, etched in the soft soil, though no one was there to leave them. The first hint of true horror crept in when I saw a figure in the distance. An old man, his face hidden beneath a tattered hat, moving slowly between the graves. I called out to him, but he vanished as I blinked, swallowed by the mist that had begun to curl around the stones like living smoke. Panic surged through me, but something deeper, more primal, rooted me to the spot. Then the ground beneath my feet trembled, small cracks splitting the earth as soft moans rose from below. The whispers returned, louder now, a symphony of sorrow and rage that filled the night. I tried to run, but my feet felt glued to the soil as if the cemetery itself was holding me captive. The air grew colder, the shadows lengthened and twisted into grotesque forms that reached for me with skeletal fingers. In the center of the graveyard, the earth burst open, revealing hands clawing their way to the surface, followed by faces frozen in eternal agony. They were the forgotten, those buried in unmarked graves, their souls restless and furious. One by one they emerged, eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light, mouths opening to release a chorus of wails that shattered my sanity. The old man's voice echoed through the cacophony, a bitter chant weaving through the cries, binding the spirits to the land. I realized then that the cemetery was a prison, a liminal place where the dead were trapped by a curse older than memory. The whispers were not pleas but warnings, begging me to leave before I too was claimed. Desperation lent me strength and I tore myself free from the invisible grasp, stumbling through the maze of graves as the undead reached out to drag me down. Branches tore at my clothes and skin, the ground heaving beneath me as if the earth itself was alive and angry. I burst through the gates, slamming them shut behind me just as a claw scratched the iron bars. The sound of nails scraping metal searing in the cold night air. I ran without looking back, the echoes of the whispers chasing me across the fields until I reached the safety of streetlights and human voices. But the horror did not end there. Every night since that night, I wake to the sound of whispering, soft and insistent, coming from beneath my bed, from the shadows in the corners of my room. I see fleeting glimpses of pale faces at the windows and hear scratching at the door, as if the restless dead are waiting for me to return, waiting to drag me back to their prison of forgotten souls. I have tried to forget, to convince myself it was a nightmare born of foolish curiosity, but the weight of their gaze follows me everywhere. The cemetery no longer belongs to the dead. It belongs to the whispers, to the shadows that crawl just beyond sight, and to me, its newest prisoner, condemned to listen forever to the whispering graves. The whispers beneath the olive grove. In the heart of a forgotten village, where the olive trees grew twisted and ancient, there lay an old cemetery shrouded in silence and shadow. Locals called it the Grove of Whispers, a place avoided after dusk, where even the bravest dared not linger. I first heard of it through my grandfather's ramblings, half-mad tales of voices carried on the wind and restless souls trapped beneath the soil. Skeptical, I dismissed it as superstition until the day I was drawn there by an inexplicable urge. It was late autumn, the air crisp and filled with the scent of decaying leaves. The sun was dipping low when I found myself standing at the iron gate, rusted and ajar, beckoning me inside. The ground was uneven, graves cracked open by time, and the names on the weathered stones were nearly illegible. As I stepped further in, the silence thickened, pierced only by the soft rustling of leaves. Then faintly I heard it, the whispering. At first a mere breath, a susurrus that seemed to ripple through the branches overhead. I stopped, heart pounding, searching for the source. The voices were neither male nor female, but a chorus of murmurs, weaving words I could not comprehend. Compelled by a force I couldn't resist, I followed the sound deeper into the grove until I reached a clearing where the oldest olive tree stood, its gnarled roots sprawling like veins across the earth. Beneath it lay a fresh mound, untouched by moss or decay, as if the earth itself had just swallowed a secret. A chill ran down my spine as the whispers intensified, swirling around me like a cold wind. From the shadows emerged a figure, a woman draped in tattered white, her eyes hollow yet radiant with sorrow. She spoke without moving her lips, her voice sinking into my mind. "You carry the blood of those who came before, the guardians of the forgotten." Bewildered, I tried to retreat, but my feet rooted to the spot. The grove would not release me. She told me of a pact sealed long ago, when the village was young and the dead were not at rest. The cemetery was more than a resting place. It was a threshold, a binding ground where the living and the dead entwined. The whispers were the voices of souls trapped between worlds, crying out for release, for remembrance. "You must listen," she intoned, "for silence is their cage." As if answering her call, the ground trembled, and the tree's roots writhed like serpents. From the earth, hands surfaced, pale, trembling, reaching for the sky. The whispers turned desperate, pleading, and I realized they were voices of those sacrificed to keep the village safe, forgotten by time and memory. The woman's gaze locked with mine, and I felt a flood of visions, faces of ancestors, rituals beneath moonlight, promises made in blood and shadow. I was chosen, she said, to bear witness, to remember what others had forsaken. The weight of generations pressed upon me, and I understood that to leave the grove was to abandon them forever. I knelt, placing my hands on the cold soil, vowing to carry their stories back to the world of light. The whispers softened into gratitude, and the hands receded beneath the earth, leaving the grove still once more. When I finally emerged from the cemetery, dawn was breaking, painting the sky with pale fire. The village stirred awake, unaware of the covenant renewed beneath the olive tree. From that day forward, I heard the whispers in quiet moments, soft reminders that the dead are never truly gone, that cemeteries are not merely places of endings, but of memory and unspoken promises. And sometimes when the wind stirs the leaves just right, I swear I can feel the eyes of the forgotten watching, waiting for someone to listen again. Each night I return to the grove, carrying lanterns and old photographs, weaving the stories of the lost into songs and tales. The whispers guide me, urging remembrance, binding past and present in an endless embrace. The Whispering Grove. At the edge of a forgotten village lay the Whispering Grove, a cemetery shrouded in mist and shadow, where the trees seemed to murmur secrets older than time. As a child, I was warned never to venture there after sunset, for the dead were said to wander among the living, seeking what they had lost. Yet curiosity drew me back one cold autumn evening, when the sky hung heavy with clouds and the air tasted of decay and rain. The gate, rusted and creaking, swung open as if inviting me in, and the scent of damp earth and wilted flowers wrapped around me like a cloak. I wandered between the crooked headstones, their inscriptions faded and worn, until I found a narrow path leading deeper into the grove, where the trees arched overhead, forming a cathedral of twisted branches. There, the whispers began, faint at first, like the rustling of leaves, then growing clearer, voices soft and pleading, calling my name. I froze, heart pounding, as a chill crept along my spine. The ground beneath my feet seemed to pulse with a slow, rhythmic beat, and the shadows lengthened, weaving between the graves like living things. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, a woman draped in tattered white, her eyes hollow yet burning with an unearthly light. She reached out with trembling hands, and in her gaze I saw a depth of sorrow that pierced my soul. She spoke without words, her voice a melody carried on the wind, telling of a promise broken long ago, of love lost and vengeance sought. The whispers grew louder, joining hers in a haunting chorus that echoed through the grove, binding me to their lament. I tried to turn away, but the earth beneath me opened, revealing a hollow filled with bones and relics, remnants of those who had vanished into the night. The woman's touch was ice against my skin, and I felt a surge of memories not my own, faces and places I had never known, a life intertwined with the dead. A sudden gust scattered leaves like flickering flames, and the grove was alive with restless spirits circling me, their hands reaching out, desperate for release. Fear seized my breath, yet within the terror was a strange calm, a connection to something beyond the veil of life and death. The woman whispered one final secret before fading into the mist. The grove was a threshold, a place where the living and the dead could speak, but only if one dared to listen. I stumbled back to the gate, the voices fading yet never truly silenced, leaving an imprint on my heart. To this day, when the wind carries the scent of rain and earth, I hear the whispers of the grove, calling me back to the shadows, to the promises buried beneath the soil, and to the haunting truth that some bonds transcend death itself. Since that night, the Whispering Grove has haunted my dreams, its spectral voices weaving through my thoughts like threads of forgotten sorrow. Each evening as darkness falls, I feel the pull of those mournful eyes, the weight of their unspoken yearnings pressing against the fragile barrier between worlds. I have returned many times, drawn by the restless echoes that cling to my soul, seeking answers to questions that have no end. The villagers speak in hushed tones of disappearances and strange lights flickering among the trees, of shadows that move with a will of their own. Some say the grove is cursed, a place where the dead walk to settle old grievances or reclaim stolen moments. Others whisper of a guardian spirit, bound to protect the secrets buried beneath the tangled roots. I have come to understand that the grove is alive, a living memory of those who came before, and that my fate is entwined with theirs in ways I cannot yet comprehend. The line between waking and dreaming blurs within its embrace, and I know that one day I may be called to cross that threshold forever, joining the chorus of whispers that never cease, lost to the world yet eternally heard. Until then, I carry their stories within me, a silent witness to the haunting truth that love and loss linger beyond the grave, whispering through the leaves of the forgotten grove.